Hi, folks. Brian Trippett here, the Front Porch Conservative. I hope you and your family are continuing to enjoy this 4th of July weekend. So, to keep the party going, I thought I'd repost an interview that I did with stand up comedian and documentarian Eric Abbenante that we recorded last Saturday, June 29th. Eric is one sharp and very funny guy, and we got into a lot of discussion about a lot of different topics. So, please enjoy this, have fun, and continue to have a great 4th of July weekend. So let me howdy. Hey, he's giving me the howdy symbol. So let me do a real quick intro and bring this gentleman in because I've been looking forward to talk to this guy for quite a while. In an age when all of us are tearing our hair out because nothing makes any sense, there are two kinds of people that we refer to help us stay sane, keeping in mind who we are individually and what sanity is defined as. We turn to comedians and documentarians. Why? Because comedians perhaps are the unfiltered truth that we all need to hear, absent going to a house of worship, and documentarians bring truth to light that nobody's willing to talk about. My next guest is a glorious combination of both. Eric Abbenante has been around for quite a while on Twitter and various other places doing what he does best, being an intellectual provocateur. His posts on Twitter are extremely informative for everything he's bringing to everybody. And when he's not doing that, he is the proprietor of a website known as Immune to the System. And he's also probably one of the best documentarians you're ever going to meet. If you don't believe me and you haven't checked this out, you need to see one of his latest efforts called Voter Fraud, a film by Eric Abbenante and who's this Lila Hart? What Lila Hart? Who's Lila Hart? Anyway, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to probably one of the coolest cats coming or going around these days, Mr. Eric Abbenante.
Oh
Eric,
man, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I mean, I just got to say that was good. That was well said. That gave me a pep in my step. I am excited. Thank you, sir. Very much
well,
appreciated.
welcome to the electronic front porch, such as it is. As I often tell my guests, we are running a tin can and string operation here that is powered by cheap surplus Ukrainian equipment. So I can't do a whole lot for you beyond giving you what I hope is a really good intro, and that sets you up to do your thing. So Eric, thank you so much for coming on. It is an absolute pleasure to have you here. And how goes things in Dallas, my man?
I aside from it being scorching hot, and my studio is in the garage, so if you see me wilting halfway through this, I'm doing my best. But it's great. I love we are comedians who me and my wife Lila Hart. You can find all of our films at lilahart.com or immunetothesystem.com, like the lovely gentleman said. And should I call you Front Porch?
Well, I go by, as I jokingly say, I go by many different names. You can call me Brian. You can call me Porch. Christy Mayer occasionally refers to me as Porchy. Although I don't know if you want to do that because you're going to make Lila jealous. I mean, however you want to handle this, man, it's entirely up to you.
Sir Porch, I think is
Lord.
probably. No, yeah, it's good to know. Good to meet you, Brian. I really appreciate it. Yeah, you can find all of our films at these places. But yeah, we cover these topics because starting out in LA, we experienced what censorship is, and we even saw that people would say that conservatives are not funny, and because there's not a lot of successful conservative comedians. And so this censorship kind of drove us towards this side because in reality, a lot of it is just them not describing things fully in an environment where they are exhibiting censorship. Joan Rivers is a great conservative comedian.
And you guys did a documentary on her. Am I not remembering that correctly?
Yeah, we did like a documentary short, like 30 minutes of it, and we're still working on the final project, but it's 2024. We have made some big strides this year. Not even stuff that we can fully talk about, but we have made some big moves this year, and I'm very happy with the progress. So, it's for the people who watched the films, we made American History of Voter Fraud, and then World Death Organization on eugenics, and then the trial of Anthony Fauci. I mean, you guys have changed our lives sincerely with these films, supporting these films. and supporting my little stupid posts on X, because it's really, they've turned from little clips into something a lot bigger for me in my life, that's actually even helped pay the mortgage. So I appreciate you guys and all the support.
Well, you call it, and I know you're being modest, calling them, little stupid posts on Twitter. But I'm telling you, dude, and I mean this in all sincerity. I'm not trying to suck up here. You are one of those sources of information that I go to. If you got something posted, I want to pay attention to it, because, like, I'm one of these old farts that's come to social media, not at the end of my life, but as I jokingly tell people, I'm old enough not to be young and young enough not to be old. I'm in that great middle. But doing what I do on social media, I've only really been doing this in earnest for like a little over a year. So when I find sources of information that either A, are bringing me stuff that I haven't heard, or B, different perspective, or C, truth that no one's talking about, I'm like, I want to like grab this, grab that, pull that down, and I'll go anywhere I can find it to get it. So when you put something out there, I'm like, ooh, got to go listen to this. And it's an absolute pleasure to have you here talking to you, because the documentaries, I was watching voter fraud this morning in preparation for getting ready for this interview, and I tell you what, and again, I'm not trying to suck up here, I'm just being totally honest, the quality of work that you and Lila put into this, the stuff you're bringing out, the clips from past years, I mean, just the production quality, it's really good. So folks, if you're not, I'll go ahead right now and drop the link in both Rumble and YouTube. Go to this website, check this out. All the documentaries are there. And this is just tremendous work. And I mean it in all sincerity. First question. How long have I got you for? Because I mean, you're in blazing heat in Texas, and good God, I don't want you to pass out on me. So how long have I got you for?
Oh, don't worry. I'm ready and I'm game. So don't worry.
All right.
We'll keep this going.
Okay.
I'll give you at least a full hour.
All right, fair enough. Let's start with background, because I mean, I see you posting stuff on Twitter. I've seen the documentaries. I've seen some old YouTube stand-up you've done, which is great. For folks who don't really know you, and your background, tell us about you. Where'd you grow up? What was your childhood like? Parents, college, all that good stuff. Give us the overview.
Yeah. I was born in Santa Monica, California. For those who want like the beginning, and then my parents moved to Utah when I was very young, and so I grew up in Utah. And part of it was growing up being like one of the only Jews in Utah, and so it's a very interesting experience to kind of because oftentimes people would go to me and ask me a lot of questions, and by people I mean Christians, and mostly, and it started off, Utah was like vast majority Mormon, and then it slowly became vast majority Christian, where there was a significant increase in Catholics coming in and others. And so it was just my experience often was being like the only Jew in the room for Christians. And so and even growing up in a mixed religion household, my dad's Catholic, my mom's Jewish. And so I'm Jewish even if I don't want to be, because, it's a matrilineal religion. And so genetically, I am Jewish no matter what. If your mom's Jewish, you're Jewish. And it's just part of my identity. I also, of course, identify with my dad's Catholic side, because as my Jewish grandma would say, we didn't get saved by Jews during the Holocaust. Christians saved us. So, we should respect them, because in the end, without Christians, Jews wouldn't really exist in a modern situation, because in the end, Jews should have some deference and respect for the one Christian nation. I mean, we don't really like to talk about it too much, but in the end, it has been a predominantly Christian nation and a Christian culture in America. And those people saved us during the Holocaust. It wasn't other Jews. I mean, yes, there were Jews involved, but it was mostly Christians. And so my grandma made a great point of like, no, you can't be like the Hasids and the Orthodox and the Orthodox, who might actually look down upon Christians. It's like, no, you actually have to have deference and respect. And so I just had a different viewpoint overall growing up predominantly in a Christian area as a Jew. So I'm not like a lot of my even Jewish relatives who grew up in a more Jewish area, in a more affluent area. Growing up in Utah gave me a much different perspective on politics, and I really enjoyed doing that. I actually got into stand up expressly as a political comedian. And in 2015, that was not cool. Like no one was really doing politics. You were considered a nerd, and it was considered very niche. And then once Trump got into the scene, everyone started talking about politics, even if they didn't know there were three branches of government. These people were trying to make jokes about politics in their act. And it became quite annoying to the people who actually knew politics and had been doing this for a while. And so I guess I'll give you a little, background that I've never really told people before since you've been so awesome. I basically, the way I structure these, the way I structure my Twitter and the way I've been kind of doing my research is I knew that the Daily Show with Jon Stewart, the people who made that show were really the people, the researchers who clipped out the stuff and presented that information to Jon Stewart, and they based the writing off of those clips, right? And those really dictate how the show goes. And so I've been very diligent about understanding, yeah, as a political comedian, if I want to have a show that's like a Bill Maher or a Jon Stewart, but on the right, then I would need to understand how to do research, make my own clips, and be able to do commentary on those things. So that's kind of why I do what I do. Because in the end, even as I am hopefully ascending as a comedian, I will still be clipping out these news things because it's part of what I will be making fun of in my act. And so I'm always in the world of paying attention to politics. And so through making clips out of news stuff and just kind of always being in that, in that mind frame. And in comedy, I had always been making content as well with the camera. I was the comedian who filmed things before, that was like really considered cool. Now all the comedians understand you have to film everything. But I had filmed 3 comedy specials before I was 30 years old because I understand that making and creating things is so important. So we started off doing political comedy. And then I started off doing political comedy. I met my wife, Lila Hart. She was just more of a standard comedian, but she did broach on a lot of very interesting subjects. And that was part of why I fell in love with her. But so we met, and we had done stand up in LA for a while. We were really enjoying it. And then the pandemic hit, and we weren't allowed into the buildings because we weren't vaccinated. And that really changed the trajectory of our lives, because that's when we started making the films as kind of a signal. Hey, the First Amendment is the most important thing in stand-up comedy. And once you start eroding the First Amendment and saying, oh, you can't say this and you can't say that, then really that's going to be the death of stand-up comedy as we know it. And so that is a big reason why we made American History of Voter Fraud at first, because that's the biggest taboo we could think of. Even more so, there's been more films on pedophilia, serial killers, the most extreme taboos you can think of, bestiality. There's been more stuff on that than rigging elections. It is the most taboo subject. Even vaccines, which we did a film on, Fauci and all that stuff, right? We've talked about that stuff, but the most taboo subject is rigged elections. They don't want to talk about, and that's when we realized, oh, this has never been made. No one's ever done a full history of all the rigged elections in the United States, because this is the information they don't want you to have. So it was kind of a big middle finger to the system as comedians. Like, oh, you're going to prevent us from saying stuff? Check this out.
Yeah, and I tell you what, I mean, like I said, I was listening to the documentary getting ready for this morning, and the stuff you guys were bringing out, I mean, past histories, etc., it was just extraordinary, because it's like, I mean, I'm from West. I mean, for my part, I'm from West Virginia, and trust me, when it comes to rigging an election, okay, we have something of a working knowledge of how to do that sort of thing, if I put it that way. I mean, I was thinking about this morning. We had a governor, yeah, immediate predecessor to the current one we have now, whose name was Earl Ray Tomlin. Now, if that name sounds like Southern good old boy, he ain't too far from the truth where Earl Ray was concerned. But his family lineage, to tie it back to the subject of voter fraud, his father was Ray Tomlin, who was part of the legendary Logan Five in my state. These guys were caught literally dumping ballots in a river in Logan County out the back of a trunk of a car because they wanted to frame an election just the way that the party structure, the Democrat party structure in Logan County wanted. Literally, the state trooper comes upon this guy. He's taking boxes out of the trunk of the car and dumping them into the river. And, they wound up convicting the governor's father of it. And now, as the years have gone by, that kind of stuff's, lessened in my home state. But I mean, West Virginia's legendary for the 1960 election with Kennedy, for the stuff that we did in the primary and the general election. So, yeah, when I was watching voter fraud, your documentary, I was like, oh, this takes me back a little bit in my state's history. So,
and yeah, it is funny. We cover 1960, and when we cover it, the two states that really flip it are Texas and Illinois. Mm-hmm. But we didn't have time to get into the whole background of the West Virginia rigging, which is very interesting because members of the mafia are involved, and it's a wild story. It was in the primary, and so there were like bigger fish to fry, but it's a fascinating story, and it's absolutely documented. It didn't make the final cut, but no, that's one of the ones I bring up, and we even have it in the comments on the YouTube of like, what's one of the things that didn't make the film that's awesome? And it's the West Virginia Democrat primary in 1960, because it is a tales all the time how corrupt it was.
Oh yeah, I mean, and like I say, and as somebody who appreciates history, those clips of NBC News on election night in 1960, I'm sitting there going, "Oh my God, that's David Brinkley, that's Chet Huntley." Oh, and I mean, I'm just sitting there going like, "Oh my God, it was just, for me, was just so cool to watch." So,
and really quick, why that footage is important. So on election night, 1960, and they go through the night. So they just didn't stop the broadcast, and so that you could see them getting progressively tired and frustrated and angry as it's like 8 and 9 a.m. of the next morning. And eventually they call the election, and they say, and California goes to Kennedy. And that's how they call the election. When in the end, California eventually went to Nixon. Now, it's not like that was the consequential thing, but just think about how we talk about Dewey Truman and how much of a gaffe that was. Yet they called the election broadcast in 1960 on the wrong state, and then they're like, and then they ended the broadcast because they were just tired. They're like, I'm done.
Yeah,
cool. California went to JFK. We're going to bed. It was hilarious. And again, there were multiple things that were called that night that eventually were changed, including Hawaii. And that takes us to January 6th, 1961, if you want to talk about that.
Oh, yeah. All right. Go for it, dude. You got the floor.
Well, I'm just saying, like, the comparisons between 1960 and 2020, what people don't understand is on January 6th, 1961, they present the evidence that there were tabulation errors or fraud, depending on how you talk to, in the state of Hawaii. And Nixon, who was the vice president at the time, so he was playing the role of Mike Pence on January 6th, 2021. He actually accepted the alternate slate of electors from his opponent. And just because the evidence was valid, and that is because of the Electoral Count Act of 1887, it is a custom since then that we present the evidence on the January 6th of the year following the election. And to say that in the media there are fake electors, that is a narrative that was never tried to be propped upon JFK. Those were not fake electors. They were alternates, and they are either accepted or rejected based on the evidence. It is not a coup.
No, No, it's not. I mean, and that's just it. It's like that was the whole. I mean, and it had been so long since the American people had seen something that was going to play out on January 6th, 2020. They had no idea the processes involved. It's like dusting off an old suit of clothes and you put it on and realize this is something people haven't seen in a long time. So I don't know how this is going to be received. I mean, but everything from the alternate electors to the presentation, and that's the part that cracks me up about January 6th, 2020, laying aside everything else that happened. All that was going to be done was that when the joint session of Congress convened, they were going to basically say, we have problems with some of these, with here's evidence. We're going to refer this back to the state for 10 days. Figure this out because you got a problem here. And it would have rolled it back and said, either we're not going to accept these electors, we can't accept these electors, we can't sort it out. And then in the end, this thing would have straightened itself out constitutionally. But everything got blown up with everything that happened outside the Capitol building. You know, it was tragic. It really was on so many levels.
Yes. Like they really how January 2021 was supposed to play out, sans instigators, was that in the 6 battleground states, they present the evidence of potential fraud. And it would have gone on for hours that day, like over 12 hours it would have taken to present all the evidence in all that states and, the back and forth. It would have been a long, boring process day of just going through everything, either accepted or rejected. And honestly, it would have been a lot better for the country because it does get resolved within that day. It's actually designed like, we got to finish it within this session. And it would have been, even if it was rejected, even if all the evidence was presented, but all of them were rejected, it would have been a completely different tone the next 4 years, as opposed to what we've been through and how people were gaslit into thinking that they were insurrectionists participating in a coup. That is where all the animosity and all the division has come from, where they lie to you about basic history. I mean, even in 2000, the Democrats were discussing January 2001, should we present an alternate slate of electors? And eventually they decided, no, we don't have the support within the party. Let's just lie down here. Because in the end, this is conjecture. This is my opinion. This is not fact. If they had gone through the evidence, 2001, they could have gone back to them and said, hey, there was an equal amount of funny business on your side. And, let's go through some discovery on this. And actually, you're going to look worse. And so because in the end, both sides in the 2000s, they went after each other's absentee ballots because they knew that's where the funny business is going to occur. It's and back then it was more absentees than mail-ins and earlies like it is now. Yeah. But it's still, they know those are the 3 vote categories where there is more time and access for an election official to tamper with your vote. And so that's where they even knew, like, hey, we know where they're cheating, because that's where we cheat. It's just like a tale's old as time. So I think that's just the biggest issue. People don't understand that this is more akin to NASCAR than a fair race.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. But I want to touch on something that you mentioned a few minutes ago, and that is the state of comedy from the outside looking in. I mean, I'm a normie. I go to a comedy show. I want to be entertained. I want to have fun. I want someone to make me laugh. But every time, and I guess this maybe is where I followed, Chrissy and Lila and Gino and you and everybody else, is there is almost like its own form of a civil war inside the comedy community these days. And the thing is, it's not you guys didn't start this. You guys just did what stand-up comedians have been doing for years. You're like, I see something, I want to talk about it. The problem is what you see and you talk about, your brethren in the comedy community are like, oh, I don't like that. I mean, just the bickering back, which, I mean, there's always a certain amount of, I don't like what you do, regardless of whatever profession you're talking about. But man, you guys just like make a joke about whatever subject it is. And your comedy brethren are just breathing down your neck, calling you racist, bigoted, homophobe. I mean, name the word. I mean, what is that like for y'all to deal with? I mean, because don't get, I mean, I know you guys have got thick skin. You're stand-up comedians. That's automatic with the job. But still, it's like there's got to be moments you guys sit there and go, I told a joke. You don't have to find it funny, but you're trying to crucify me or my wife or anybody else over this? What's the matter with you guys? I mean, you guys ever have those discussions?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's a very good question, and it actually opens up a very large can of worms for me here.
Go for it.
Because in the end, what a lot of what you're discussing is, in the end, comedians view the world as a zero-sum game. They don't believe that the pie can just get larger and everyone can succeed. They assume that if someone gets success, that detracts from your success.
Mhm.
And the most insecure, competitive people you meet are comedians, because there's other competitive people, right? But they
Uh-huh.
work on their craft a little more. Like the most cutthroat people are comedians. They at this, especially modern comedians. Back in to explain it from an economical perspective.
Okay.
Back even if you don't adjust for inflation, um, Dick Gregory in 1960 would make more for his talk show appearances on the Jack Parr show than comedians do now. And I'm not
Really?
talking by a factor of 5 or 10. I'm talking by a factor of 100 to 1,000. He,
Really?
when he became a regular on the Jack Parr show, he
Okay.
talked about how he would make $5,000 plus per an appearance, right? And then, I mean, if you adjust that for inflation, that's insane.
Oh,
Okay.
I'll bet.
So, these comedians had access to um, a lot more money making opportunities between an open mic and a headliner. Now we've gotten to the point where if you're not a national touring headliner, you might as well be an open micer, because there aren't nearly as many economic opportunities for those in the middle. And so it creates an environment where comedians are even more cutthroat and even more want to accelerate the demise of their peers by participating in cancel culture.
Oh,
And
man.
and this is why a lot of them have their hands tied behind their back and really can't say anything, because once they get an agent or a manager, they are told if you talk about this or this, then you will get canceled. And that's why a lot of them, in the end, all they go up there and say is white Christian males are evil, because that's what's left. That's the thing they're allowed to say on stage. Everything else they're afraid to say. So in the end, the cancel culture is also overtly political, because it directly guides you to one side. You have to be towards the left or you have no career. What do you want to be?
Yeah.
And so this is the issue, is that if you are a comedian who is like, you don't even put me in here, take me out of it. Tyler Fisher, who has a much bigger platform than me and has an agent and a manager, and has been touring regularly. He's been telling people, he's been being told regularly that you're a white male, that's why you can't be hired for this. And so
Wow.
it's just a pervasive thing over and over that, it used to be a lot different. If you were a Norm Macdonald or a Patrice O'Neill, you could sacrifice opportunities by telling the truth, but there were still lanes for you to succeed and be able to feed your family. Would you be as rich as the Chris Rocks of the world? No. The Jon Stewarts? No. But you would be fine. You wouldn't be out on the streets, and you wouldn't be so desperate that you were beholden to the corporate overlords. But now it is at the point where comedians either choose to sell their soul to the big pharma, Hollywood overlords, this deep secret society that we all assume controls things. Whatever you think of that is, and whatever your imagination, your Rorschach test of that world is, it really is true. There is a bias.
Yeah.
So now we are to the point where, people like Chrissy Mayer or Tyler Fisher, they have to go independent. They have to find a way to build their own platform because they know that the standard methods of upward mobility that used to exist in comedy no longer exist. And the way that the gatekeepers would promote people and scout talent and then eventually put them on a Carson or even a Letterman afterward, and we're able to build them up, those venues do not really exist anymore. So we're in a very dangerous time in comedy where the voices have never been more controlled. And that is why you as a comedy fan feel like you are not being fulfilled by the comedians you're watching.
Yeah. Oh, I absolutely agree. I mean, you mentioned Johnny Carson. It is nothing for me to not constantly, but come up in my feed, my YouTube feed or whatever. Hey, here's a clip from Carson where he had Robin Williams on or whomever. I don't know that Johnny Carson gets hired in this environment to host the Tonight Show or anybody like Carson, because Carson was an equal opportunity offender. He was yes, he hosted a show every night for 30 years. But when it came to taking shots at everybody, it didn't matter, Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative, whatever. He just took his shot and he had fun with it. The audience laughed and everybody went on down the road. But I mean, the other thing, going back to something that you said, which is it's true of so many people now, the fact that comedians are having to go an independent route, and the avenues for them to succeed in their chosen profession, I mean, this, it's not just confined to comedy, obviously. People who are making independent content, in what the political science sphere, kind of like what I do covering politics or whatever. It's just we are so sensorial. We cannot be honest and transparent enough to have a conversation about, okay, here comes the emperor down the street. Wait a minute. Why is this man not wearing a stitch of clothing? No. He's got a suit of clothing on. Look at that. It's a beautiful lining. I mean, the tailoring. No, he's naked as a jaybird. You cannot say the emperor has no clothes anymore, regardless of whether it's comedy or political content or anything else, or medicine, going back to your documentaries about Dr. Fauci. Let me you mentioned when you first started in comedy, and I always find it, these are things I always find interesting, and I always like to find out why. What got you personally into comedy? I mean, because what's that moment that you had where you're like, hey, they laughed at my joke. I like doing this. This is fun. Was it that for you, or was it something else that got you into comedy?
The common denominator that ties all comedians together is that comedians throughout their life overcame adversity through humor. And that, as a comedy historian, I am, it's funny because I hear that question asked over and over, and people incorrectly answer it all the time. There is no doubt. I've studied all the greats. There isn't a single great comedian or even shitty comedian who, as soon as if you hear their life story, what is it about? Throughout their life, every little piece of adversity to big pieces of adversity, they got through it through humor. And that's just that's Lila's life. That's my life. In the end, that is how I use my talents best, is through humor. And so stand-up comedy was the natural route. Now,
Sure.
I also, I looked at my peers like Woody Allen and Mel Brooks, and the fact that they made films and did stand-up comedy was also very attractive to me. So I was, also focused in that route. But in the end, all comedians have that one common denominator, and it ties us all together. And that's why we have a different language together. It's the same I mean, it's a similar bond. It's not nearly as important, mind you, but it's a similar bond to where military people, when they talk to each other, they have a bond, and it's for a reason, because that's how they overcame adversity. Obviously,
Yeah.
much more serious, but in the end, that's why people, like, you get a group of Marines together and they talk a certain way, and you don't understand it really unless you are in that world. And comedians are kind of the same way. We both talk like sailors. It's kind of a funny thing about it, is like, you get around, oh my God, that's how they talk. Yes, we do. Yes, we do, because we are unfiltered. And unfortunately, that is going away too, because comedians used to be able to talk to each other behind the scenes and not, feel any pressure. And there's a lack of trust now too. And so it is tough. And you're right. The censoring that we are all experiencing is driving us to self-censorship. And that's also why comedy is struggling.
Well, let me ask you in that vein, keeping it in the realm of comedy, because I mean, this unofficial civil war, as I liken it to, has sort of been going on, at least in my mind, for the past 15, 20 years.
It's
And,
not a bad analogy. It's
okay.
basically what you're saying is there's a civil war between the haves and the have-nots, the people who say things and don't say things in reality. And though it is kind of it is funny that even the non-comedians are noticing this.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's true because I mean, like, I'll give you an example. About 2 years ago, I had the opportunity and I took it to go down to Orlando for a couple of different reasons. But one of them is, there was, Chrissy was hosting a thing down there at the Improv Club. Lila was part of it. And I thought to myself, boy, that much comedic talent in one night, if you don't get your butt down to Orlando and watch us, you're going to kick your rear end for the rest of your life. So, me's go buy a ticket, me get me a hotel room, and me go down to Orlando. Had a blast at the Improv Club. And each one of the comedians, even though they may have been up there for like 10, 15 minutes or whatever, and Gino closed out the show, I'm sitting here in the back, and I was sitting back there I had the opportunity and the privilege to sit with Carrie Smith and Mike Harlow and a couple other people. And I'm sitting there in the back and I'm watching, Lila and everybody up on stage. And I'm sitting here going, how the hell are these people not more better known nationally than what they are? Why do they not have gigs on Comedy Central or Netflix or something? Because they're so daggone stinking funny. Now, and it blew me up. And I'm sitting there going over, and I am not saying this to suck up to you. I'm really not. I know this is the first time we're talking to each other. But, Lila is extraordinarily talented, along with everybody else on that stage. And I'm just a normie, going to a comedy club to get some laughs. And I'm sitting there going, why in God's name are these people? And it hits me. It's like, because of the Civil War. The people that they have don't want to let the Lilas or the everybody. And I'm not just saying this as like, oh, I'm down with the struggle kind of a comment. It's true. They don't want Lila or Chrissy or Gino or Anthony or anybody else to have that opportunity, because it's like, we can't let these guys that we don't agree with have a shot. And it just makes me sad for you guys. It really
The toughest part about stand-up is it's about access to stages in the end. And so until you can build your own platform and justify being on that stage by saying, I can put asses in seats and I can fill out the room to perform in front of that stage, it is tough. And traditionally in stand-up, there was a path of upward mobility and a meritocracy of talent, where if you showed that you were able to perform well in front of certain rooms, they would give you access to higher rooms. Now it has gotten inverted to the point where they only want the people to fill the rooms to access the rooms. They don't care about the talent part.
Yeah.
And so that is where a lot of audiences just feel completely unsatisfied, feeling they are not satiated by what they had just seen, because it was okay. Whereas people like Lila and Chrissy really give you that old school comedy feeling of, oh, I've seen something new, original, groundbreaking. And this is why I watch new comedians, because they're going to give me something new. It's always great that you can watch Richard Pryor and George Carlin, but you have to wonder, what would they say about these times? And that's where the new comedians come in, and they have the torch passed to them. and it's unfortunate that there are great new comedians all over this country. And trust me, when I started, I had the same feeling of I knew 100 people who should be on TV and be better than
Yeah.
everyone on TV, and
Yeah.
yet they are being relegated. I'll give you one. I posted besides me and Lila, I posted him once on my page. His name's Ty Rivera. He is a gay comedian who has a conservative viewpoint, and my audience loves him every time I post him. He is just a fascinating, fresh perspective, and when I started out, he gave me very good advice in the beginning, and was just a mensch. And yeah, he did a roast during the 2016 election, Trump versus Hillary, and he came on as the conservative guy, and
Mhm.
in more of a leftist format, and crushed it. Absolutely crushed it. You guys have to watch it. I'd post it myself, but it's his moment. But it's just, oh my god, it was so good. So like that's that. People need to. Trust me, there are so many people of my generation, or like the generation before me, who like really have not got the spotlight yet, and absolutely deserve it more than the people who adhere to the
Yeah.
LGBTQ BLM blah 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 movement.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned a couple of my favorites. I mean, I love George Carlin, and people think of Carlin in the latter part of his career, where he was. Some people would call him the angry, ranting old man. No, no, no. The reason that I appreciate Carlin so much is his love of the English language. That man could take a phrase or a word and make a comedy bit out of it. I mean, the best example of that for me, and you've probably seen this, stuff the stuff routine. I gotta pack up stuff. No, shit, now I gotta get more stuff. Pryor's the same way. Pryor could take one little incident he finds in life, or even talking about his own life, and just make comedy gold out of it. And they went on because of what they could do. Like you said, filling seats. Movie producers, movie directors, like, I gotta have that guy in my movie. I gotta have this guy co-write a script with me. Which most people don't even know. Blazing Saddles, one of the greatest comedy movies in history. Richard Pryor co-wrote that with Mel Brooks, and that's the only credit he got for it. But go ahead. You look like you want to.
One thing that is interesting though about that time period, that time period, there were more paid opportunities for those that weren't a headliner yet.
Mm-hmm.
Like working up to that, there were more paid opportunities than there are now. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, even my grandpa, who was just he was a trombone player. He used to get $50 a show after his banking. He was like this old stodgy Michigan banker, and then he would go out and play the saxophone. And so it's like, but he would get $50 a show. $50 a show now would be considered good, and like
Yeah.
that's sad because like right now you're getting a drink ticket, maybe. You're not even getting gas half the time. And so, and I'm not saying, these are the opportunities that were given to people who couldn't put asses in seats. And that's the thing. There used to be a lot of paid opportunities for those who were working up to being able to fill a room. Now it is so inverted, and it's very tough. And that's more of why we're more focused on, building our platform, and, Lila got a great gig even this weekend that I had to take her to the airport for. So things are sometimes you get a little victory even when you're telling the truth.
Well, and that's something. I mean, and I remember that you had mentioned that. Hey, I might not be there at 11:30. I got to take Lila to the airport, which I was like, cool, fine. I'm perfectly fine with that because, I know you don't know me real well yet, but trust me, I can talk someone's leg off and have on occasion. I can vamp, okay, as the kids say these days. But yeah, I mean, going back to something else, talking about the economic opportunities. I watch because I had a conversation one time, and I had her on the channel. Keanu Thompson, the mutual friend to you and Lila.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I said, how important is social media to comedians in your generation? She said, it's huge. She said, because, I find out about gigs. I promote my work. I let people see some of what I do, be it on Instagram or on Twitter or whatever. And you guys are building your same platforms. You mentioned it, a little while ago in the conversation. When did you make the decision that's like, okay, I'm doing stand-up comedy. I love doing editing. I love doing all the things that I do. What got your gears going when it came to like, I want to do a documentary? What was it that made you say, I want to get into this. I want to see what I can do with it?
The main thing was, we were happy doing stand up. I was producing Lila's live talk show, Small Talk with Lila Hart. And it was a real pleasure. We were just focused on that. And then we were taken away from the stage. We were told you can't enter buildings because you're unvaccinated. That is what prompted us, because we had the time and we were just, we were researching, and that was that in the end it was our middle finger. Okay, if you're gonna prevent us from being on stage, then we're gonna release something that you don't want us to release. And so in the end, I've always been a student of history. I have always used that in my act as well. And so I was able to take my knowledge that I had been using to the stage and crystallize it in a film. And in the end, like I said, I had been filming comedy specials. I'm, directing and editing Lila's talk show. I was always in that world, but yeah, this was my magnum opus of, okay, this is what you get for shutting me up. Don't ever shut me up again.
Mm-hmm. And believe me, brother, like I say, the most is American Voter Fraud the most recent documentary that you guys have put out together,
Oh,
or,
it was
or
our debut. Our
it was
debut.
the
It was our
debut?
debut film. So
Okay.
we had never made a film before. American History of Voter Fraud, total cult classic. That it was a small but very strong contingent that grew and grew and grew and kept getting us more and more opportunities. And now Lila sells American History of Voter Fraud merch after shows.
I
And so
I've seen it. It's very good looking stuff. I love watching Lila work an after show, because she is your wife, and I'm again, I gush, and I know you gush as much as I do. Your wife is a doll. She really is. It is so much fun to watch her work an after room. It really is, because she's just a joy to be around, number one. But man, she is absolutely working it and crushing it every time. No kidding.
she's an old school performer. Dick Gregory once said that, when someone pays that $3.50 for the ticket, you are their servant. You are there to serve and please them for that show. And Lila is really from that school of just, saying, I'm here to really honor the people who are giving me this opportunity to perform in front of you. And she really takes that seriously, even to the point of the after show. And it is much more of an earnest old school approach, whereas in new school they want to say like they're the stars, you're lucky to see me, I'm the present. No,
Yeah.
she understands that without the people watching her, it's just a figment of her imagination.
Yeah.
This is a beautiful thing, and she understands, like, even Dick Gregory talks about it in that speech of like, you don't know how long someone drove to come see you, what they had to go through, what they had to set aside. And it is truly an honor. And, even, it's, I always tell this story about Dick Gregory. He's performing in front of an all Jewish room, and he kept throwing his best stuff at them, and they were just looking at him stone faced. And it wasn't that they were disagreeing or hating. It was that they had already lived the exact same experience that Dick Gregory was living, but just in a different format. And so you're saying that they were relating so much to it, and he'd understand it, but he kept going. He was so earnest, and he never stopped, and he stayed as strong in his convictions as when he started. And at the end, after they didn't react the whole time, he got a thunderous standing ovation. And it's just the understanding of, continually serve the audience, and never stop, and eventually you will get to that point of where they are giving you a standing O and they are cheering for you. And so it's it's one of those things. Lila, I know, is a sleeping giant, and at some point, like a life jacket that's being held 100 feet under sea level, it's gonna pop up and it's gonna shoot up like a rocket.
Yeah.
And so I'm really excited for her, and what she's been doing. She has been working so hard and honestly held back so much by the past 4 years in this political BS. And honestly, she, even before 2020, I had got to see what online censorship was from her account. It happened even before 2020, and I gotta really have my eyes opened, because I was still very skeptical of, like, that's what losers say. You're just complaining. Oh, you're being shadow banned. And little did I know they were actually implementing those things, and it was a new thing that they had developed. And you can see it when it happens. And when I first saw it happen to my wife's account, I was like, oh wow, I honestly, I started off from a more liberal perspective, and the more that I saw that the left continued to put a thumb on the scale and made everything more unfair for the other side, it made me gravitate towards the other side, because it was just like, one, that is not what I thought this was. That is not what the old school definition of liberalism was. The main thing was that the liberals used to be, in pretend, the party of free speech. That was what they had masqueraded and postured themselves as. And there came a point where you realized, oh, that is completely fabricated. It's actually quite the opposite. And that is when I said, never again, goodbye forever. And as a comedian, all we have is our free speech. And that's why I don't understand the comedians who are not patriotic. This is an American art form. It is a purely American art form, because you have to be able to say whatever you want without repercussions, without fearing the state. And also, there were Americans that actually, like Lenny Bruce, George Carlin, Dick Gregory, Woody Allen, even, who was put on a government watch list for talking about how the Warren Report was fiction. Okay. It's comedians like those that fought for your right to be able to say whatever you want, and to throw it all away is embarrassing. To just be like, okay, I'm going to take the money and I'm not going to say what I want. I'm going to throw away this ultimate right that was given to us by great Americans. You're disgusting. And a comedian has to be patriotic. There is no other choice, because if not, you are rejecting why the art form exists. America. That's why it exists. And the fact that people don't understand that, it shows their lack of history, and it shows why they really don't deserve to be on that stage and to have that glorious opportunity that people died for.
Yeah, literally. I mean, literally. And I hadn't thought about it from that perspective, but you're absolutely right. I mean, stand-up comedy is totally an American thing, not just the fact in the art, the form of the art itself, but what undergirds it and makes it even possible is a distinctly American idea. I can get up on a stage in front of a microphone, and I could flop, I could get applause, but by golly, by George, I'm going to say whatever I want. And why can I do that? Because I'm an American. Why can I do that? Because this is an American art form. And that's a great perspective. I mean, I had never really considered it from that angle, but you're absolutely right.
And you're right. You're right. Also, the audience is like capitalism, because you put that idea out there into the market of ideas, and it's either incredibly successful or it is not. And the reason why comedy now is struggling is because the audience has moved into more this socialist collectivist idea of, oh, let's give you pity laughs, and oh, the black person and the queer the intersectional person is on stage, they've checked all these boxes, we are so happy that they're there. That's why people truly respect Lila, because it's not about her disability necessarily. She's elite. in her category with her disability. And in the end, there really, if she was doing a sport, there would be a caveat. If she was great, but anything else is a caveat. In stand up, she is elite, period. And that's also part of what's magical about it, is it's like that truly, it is pure capitalism. You are allowed to just present yourself into the world and see if it is successful or not. And that's part of what has been taken away, is they don't want people to be put out there in the marketplace of ideas, because they don't want to see that, oh, there's some conservative people, or just people who have a divergent opinion, who actually might be more successful than the people that you're propping up on stage right now. And that is where we are, to tie it really back to your original question about all this, is like, this is why, as a stand-up comedy fan, you're like, why are Lila and Chrissy not bigger than these hacks that I'm seeing on TV right now?
Yeah. And if you're just joining us, my name is Brian Tripp, and I'm the Front Porch Conservative. I am joined by comedian and documentarian Eric Abbenante. We're having a discussion about any number of different subjects. So if check out his work, I've got a feed going across the bottom of the screen where his Twitter page can be found. Highly informative. Got his 2 different websites where the documentaries are and information he's constantly putting out. We're sitting around on the electronic front porch having one hell of a good conversation. Let me tie it into a couple of different things. One, you've been talking about, and Lila talks about, and everybody does, that you guys are constantly hustling. I mean, you drove her to the airport today to do a gig somewhere in America that, just kind of came up at the last minute. And you guys are building your own platforms, and you're letting people find your work and letting the marketplace of ideas determine whether you rise and fall. You had mentioned a moment ago that the level of upward opportunities for comedians is not the same now as it was, back in the day. How frustrating or how rewarding is it for you and Lila and others in the entrepreneurial spirit in which you find yourselves? Yeah, you're hustling, you're scrambling, you're building, but there's got to be moments you look at it and go, damn, this feels good. Or moments you go, oh, God, can I catch a break? I mean, what's that like for you guys? Because in the end, it rises and falls on you guys now more than it did, say, 25, 30 years ago for other comedians who came before you guys.
Yeah, and it balances out. So in the end, the counter to the stuff I'm saying is, in the end, back in the day, the comedians from the Catskills era, they had to learn how to sing and dance and do stand up. So there's always been this thing of, you can't just do stand up. You have to learn all these other things. And so whether it was singing and dancing, or now it's learning how to edit and be your own publicist, there's always going to be some of that element. But in the end, it is undoubtable that there are just less economic opportunities in the middle. And I remember listening to Ralphie May, great comedian.
Yeah.
And this is before he was like really big. And he was talking about, kicking his manager off because he himself was generating comedy stand-up gigs that were like $100,000 a week and plus to 150,000. And he was like, you, the manager, aren't really contributing anything to this. Why do I need you? He got rid of him. But it gave me a great glimpse of like, oh, there is actual real money that can be made in stand-up if you can get to the national touring headlining area.
Sure.
A great example, Sebastian Maniscalco, the year that he became a national touring headliner, broke, dude got 18 million in a year, just from pure stand-up gigs. And by the way, I am so happy for him, and I hope he gets 18 million more. But it shows you that, there used to be, in the Ralphie May era, even, there were like a lot more economic opportunities for the road dogs, for the people who were touring in the, not as glamorous areas of just the, the more, not the major cities, but like the middling cities and that kind of thing. You could make serious money. And now it's just, everything is dwindling, especially with inflation, all this other stuff. It has just become a tough time. And so in the end, it really is great to be independent and build your own platform and not to be beholden to gatekeepers. It's just a tough time for those who are trying to go the old school route of being beholden to these people, because even if you get selected, the claw machine pulls you out. I have been chosen. Well, you've been chosen to say nothing. And in that point, your career is actually going to suffer because they're like, oh man, he got big and now he doesn't say anything. He pulls all his punches. I remember when he was funny. And so you never want to be that as well. And so I'm very proud of where we're at because we've navigated this time period, and we could have totally lost our sanity, lost a lot of things. But we actually have come out much stronger together, and we know nothing can stop us. And so it's it's good, but also I am recognizing, there were other easier time periods to be a stand-up comedian and to make the path from open micer all the way up to national touring headliner. Now, in the end, it's not a bad time to be a national touring headliner at all. Once you're at the top, it's not a bad time at all. It's getting to that point there are a lot of new challenges to it, but a lot of new opportunities. And so we're in, it is fun to talk about both because most people don't understand comedy history and how things have changed and adjusted over the years as well. So I appreciate the conversation on it.
No. I mean, I tell people all the time, you come on the electronic front porch, and I'm going to toot my own horn here. So long as you don't take a shot at, somebody doesn't take a shot at my viewers, you can say anything you want. I don't care. Someone will say to me, "Can I say this particular word?" I'm like, "I don't give a shit. Go ahead." And everybody's like, "Oh, okay, we can say that."
Do you have like a name for your audience members, like the front porchers?
Fedora Nation.
Okay.
Fedora Nation.
I thought of an incredibly inappropriate name for your your audience. Let's just say
they might like it. Go ahead. I don't care.
Let's just say it starts with Porch. You can use your imagination to figure it out. But it's like,
okay.
I'm just saying there's a really hilarious and appropriate joke in there. Anyways, but no, I really have appreciated this opportunity to talk to your audience, and it's been wonderful. I wanna leave with one thing. Really,
go ahead.
Okay, this frustrates me to no end. So every time I meet an election official out here in Texas, every single time I will ask them the same thing. Or if someone trying to get my vote, like Julie Johnson, Texas representative out here, tried to come out here, knock on my door and get my vote. I ask all the election officials trying to get me to register to vote and them the same question. Do you know about ballot box 13? And not a single person has said yes yet. So I would like to educate people, including Julie Johnson, who represents my freaking district. Okay. Ballot box 13 was in 1948. Lyndon B. Johnson here in Texas. He lost his bid for Senate on election night, 1948. Then he got this election official in Jim Wells County. His name was Luis Salas, and he rigged the election for LBJ, and LBJ won his Senate election by 87 votes. Luis Salas accomplished this by simply writing names at the end of the list. They were not fake names. They were people who actually existed in Jim Wells County. Mm-hmm. They did not vote. And these people testified in court that they did not vote, but their testimony was superseded by Luis Salas, who at the time said they voted. Well, 29 years after that 1948 election, Luis Salas admitted that he rigged that Senate election for LBJ. Now, to be fair, LBJ was actually doing this in response to when he lost in 1941.
I got screwed. I'm going to screw somebody else.
That's how he learned the trick. Okay. Yep. And so in the end, a man who rose to presidency by not winning a single election without rigging or having someone's head conspicuously blown off. That guy rose to the presidency, never won an election.
Yep.
Welcome to America, folks. And that's the American history of voter fraud. And that ballot that Luis Salas rigged was ballot box 13. And they were stupid enough to take a picture with it. The stuffed ballot box. They took a picture with it. You could look it up online. People don't really realize what the context of that picture is. They are taking a picture next to the ballot box they had just stuffed days after the election so that LBJ can win.
And this, folks, is the Democrat Party that believes in democracy for everybody. There you go.
And in the first 15 minutes of the film, you can hear LBJ, the only tape of him saying the word. Hard
R. I went, holy cow.
Every other thing is conjecture, hearsay. He may have said it. He said that. You can hear it. Okay.
And this, folks, is why you need to check out The History of American Voter Fraud by Eric and his lovely wife, Lila. My man, it has been I'm not going to let you go so you don't melt down there in Texas. But it's been an absolute pleasure having you on here. And I'm serious when I say this. If you've got something to promote, a new documentary, a show, or whatever, message me and say, hey, man, can I get 5-10 minutes? Dude, you got the floor. You message me. You want to come back on here. And I'm serious about this. You want to come back on here anytime, you let me know. I'd love to have you back on here.
Yeah, I gotta come back and say hi to Fedora Nation. I will definitely.
Oh, appreciate you guys. All right, now I'll let you do your commercial. Where can people find you on social media? How can they best support you? How can they best help Miss Lila? What can they do to help you guys out?
All right, for my wife, lilahart.com, LILAHART. My wife has the shortest name. I don't know how people get Leela, Layla. I mean everything but Lila. Every single time. You just watch it next time and you'll see this pattern. The shortest, simplest name, people screw it up. LILAHART, Lila Hart. Jeff Ross was the most infamous. It would always screw up her name, even though it's Lila. I would tell him that anyways. And then you can find all my stuff. Eric Abbenante. I'm the only one with that name. I do have imposters, people trying to pretend that they're me. They're LA open micers that are jealous of me. They stopped posting once I called them out on their Instagram. Anyways, so Eric Abbenante, immunetothesystem.com and lilahart.com. You can find all of our stuff there. We have 3 amazing 2-hour films for you to check out. American History of Voter Fraud, World Death Organization, the History of Scientific Eugenics, and the Trial of Anthony Fauci. Really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much, Brian. Thank you to Fedora Nation. And until next time, because I'll be back. I promise you guys. See ya.
Brother, we look forward to it. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. Now go find some ice cubes and
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Hey, why are you not subscribed to my channel? So if you haven't done it yet, go ahead and do it. Subscribe to my channel on Rumble. Subscribe to my channel on YouTube. While you're at it, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. We'll take all the help we can get from wherever we find it on the internet. Remember to share the video around. Leave a comment below. It really helps out with the algorithm. And otherwise, continue to be the awesome person that you are, and you and your family have a great 4th of July weekend. We'll see you this Saturday morning, 10:30 a.m. for Front Porch Brunch, where we will be back live and talking about the news. Catch you then.